My name is Philip Ullman, and I'm the Chief Energizer of the Coordinate Group. That normally raises two questions. Question number one, what's a Chief Energizer? And question number two, who are the Coordinate Group? Let me start with number one. A Chief Energizer's role is to energize the team. It's about servant leadership. I don't dictate, I coach. The Coordinate Group was set up in 1959 by my dad. It was a security guarding company. I joined in 1996. At the time, turnover was about 12 million, and we employed about 1,000 security officers. Fortunately, now we've moved into recruitment and facility services. Turnover is north of 850 million. We placed over 125,000 people in the last year. And geographically, we're in the UK, Ireland, all over Europe, and in Australia. So why am I here today? The answer is that a year ago, we converted the Coordinate Group into a social enterprise. What does that mean? We changed three things in the Constitution. Number one, we capped dividends. That's not a percentage cap, that's an absolute cap. The rest is for society, and that's a very powerful concept, which I'll come back to later on. The second thing we've done is we've capped remuneration at 20 times the lowest paid. And the final change we're making is we're introducing profit-sharing arrangements. What is the impact of these changes on our organization? And the answer is it's early days. The senior management team completely love the idea. They've bought into the concept of capping their remuneration. They're happy to change their lives first and then to give back to the society. So they completely get it. The challenges I have is we placed 125,000 people last year. A lot of them are at the minimum wage. Effectively, I'm not in control of their remuneration package. I'm an influencer. So this journey will take time. I want to help to work with my clients to influence them, to persuade them over time to move to a living wage, to move to different ways of operating, but I can't force them to. So because of the scale of our organization, we have to move at a sensible pace. So we haven't yet even announced to the whole organization exactly how we're going to change. The concept of a covenant hasn't been around for that long either, but we can't wait for every single one of our clients to change in order to affect what I think is of the moment. And therefore, we're moving ahead and we're engaging with government because I'm impatient. I want the change to happen sooner, but we are going to take all of our people with us and we're going to communicate with them. That is imminent, but we haven't done it yet. So what about the future? So to explain the future, I'd like to start with a short history lesson. The last time the dissemination of information changed radically was in the 15th century when the printing press was invented. What that did was suddenly you could disseminate information to large numbers of people very quickly. Before then, you had to handwrite documents which limited the spread of information. Then you could actually print documents and share knowledge, and that changed the world fundamentally. It resulted in the Industrial Revolution, in new institutions, namely liberal democracy and capitalism. Now we're at the next stage of development. So that was effectively automation of manpower. We're now at the age of automation of the mind, which is the balance that needs to be automated. And now, in an instant, you can communicate with the whole world, and using smartphones and the internet, everybody hears your message in an instant. Surprise, surprise, the solutions, namely capitalism and liberal democracy, that worked when we needed hierarchy because of the way we disseminated information, are fundamentally failing. They're not working. Now, what do I think is a problem with them? Let me explain to you briefly the problems with capitalism and the problem with democracy. Starting with capitalism. The trouble there is it's good at innovation, it's good at creating wealth, but it has no method for distributing that wealth. There's no social conscience in capitalism. Turning to the state, to liberal democracy, the problem there is you've got no competition, no innovation. You can't come up with creative ideas because there's no scope. So fundamentally, both of those models fail. So the answer to the challenges we face is what I call covenant, as opposed to contract. So in a contract, I have my interests, you have your interests. We are exchanging value, but the collective is for me as an individual. It's protecting me. It's because I'm scared. That doesn't work. A covenant is very different. It's me with my own identity, my own beliefs, my own values, my own education, working with you who has a different identity. You're not the same as me. You have your own beliefs, your own values, and we're working together not in competition, not transactionally, but to create a new identity for the common good. That's the key concept. It's fundamentally different to contract. Now, how do you go about creating a covenantal organization or covenantal decision-making process? There are 3 changes that are required. Disintermediation is number 1, wholeness is number 2, and purpose is number 3. Let me start with disintermediation, both vertically and horizontally. Fundamentally, as I've explained, we no longer need hierarchy. So vertically, we need to create what I call self-managing organizations. These are teams of 10 to 12 people that within the team, you have all the skills that you need to perform a task, to deliver a service. Any external advice or central functions support that team, advise, but don't impose their views on the team. Now, the key here is how do you make decisions? And if there's one thing you take away from this course, it's this point. How can you make decisions so they work covenantally? The answer is by what we call the advice process. So I make a decision, and I'm accountable for that decision, but I have to consult with 2 groups of people. Number 1, with anybody impacted by that decision, and number 2, by anybody who has advice to offer for that decision. Now, it may sound simple, but it's not, because it's not democracy as we know it. In democracy, I vote, and others vote. I don't really understand what I'm voting for, and a result happens, and the person implementing the decision didn't necessarily vote for that decision. In the UK, for example, the people implementing Brexit did not vote for it. And fundamentally, it's very hard to implement something when you haven't got your heart in it. So it's not the current form of voting, and it's also not consensus. Consensus doesn't work. In consensus, everybody has to agree. It gives too much power to the individual. What we need is a combination of the I, my identity, combined with the universal we. And that's the advice process. Now, when I talk to these millennials, they absolutely love it, because until now, they've had to wait for decades before they become MD, CEO, and they haven't got the patience. They want to change the world straight away. In this model, because you have no hierarchy, it's gone. Fundamentally, they can change the world straight away. So this is a model that the millennials absolutely love. Horizontally, we've come to a point in time where there are lots of different levels in the supply chain. Lots of intermediaries, again, and they create noise, they prevent a covenantal relationship from happening. You can't have 2 people who fundamentally engage with each other because there's so many stages in between. So what we need to do is build platforms which directly connect the 2 people, the producer and the consumer, with no one in between. And we have people that, again, advise, coach, facilitate, but don't get in between. Again, this is a concept the millennials love, and technology is key in delivering the platform. The second change is wholeness. We come to work, many of us, with a mask on. We come to meetings and we speak and answer questions in the way we feel the person asking the question wants to hear the answer. It's a behavior that I think we learn in school, where we answer the teacher based on what we think the teacher wants to hear. We're not ourselves. And that doesn't get a full value of a covenant where I have my own identity, because I don't, because I'm not behaving wholly myself. So we need to create processes and methods of working which encourage wholeness. And the final change is purpose. Again, this is fundamental to social enterprise. This is effectively focusing on the needs of all the stakeholders, not just the shareholder. This is fundamentally saying that I'm going to change the world. My mission is not to make profits for the few, it's to perfect the world for the many. And the other key concept with purpose is CAPS. The word capitalism is an anagram of a cap and limits. And that's what it's missing. Limits, lower limits. We need to pay everybody a living wage, not a minimum wage, a living wage, so they can live a dignified existence. We also have to cap remuneration and cap dividends. And the power of that concept is completely mind-blowing. So that's fundamentally the message of my address today. We need to move from contract to covenant, from a culture of fear and scarcity to trust and abundance, and from competition for the self to competition for the common good. I'm often asked the question, how do we move from contract to covenant? And to me, the idea is not to wait for the government to do it. I like to help engage the millennials and other people in a movement which is focused on the transition. The strategy is about enabling the millennials to use the two powers that they have, which is the power to choose who they work for and the power to choose who they consume from. And if they can use those powers to create covenant, to create a medium where people do the right things, society will change. One further point I'd like to make, which is, why did I change? I'm a poacher turned gamekeeper. And I was a very typical capitalist and had an epiphany about 2 or 3 years ago. People asked me why, and it was the kids. I've got 4 wonderful children who are idealistic, far more idealistic than I was at the time. And my daughter got married, and my future son-in-law was considering his future. He was in his final year of a law degree, and conventionally, we were discussing this with his parents, and we all said, he's got to earn a living, he's got to take his responsibility seriously, he's got to make money, and he's got to support his family and give charity. And my son-in-law said, no, I love engaging with the kids. I love changing their lives. That's what I'm going to do. And that was a pivotal point, and I initially was on the side of my wife and the in-laws, but I realized he got it right. And fundamentally, the epiphany happened, and I am now effectively, even though I'm a baby boomer by birth, I'm a millennial adopted, and that's why I made a change. Thank you very much for listening.